Hi, it's Monday, November 25th, and I am getting ready to try to get some rye drilled on some new terraces just to kind of get them, get stuff held together so that the dirt doesn't wash before next spring when we plant the first row crop on it. So I got the Great Plains drill fixed up there on Friday, or mostly fixed up. Had to fix a tire or fix a tube in a tire today, and then got some seed. Dad worked stuff down a little bit with the disc to try to smooth up from the dozer work, and then I'm headed over there right now to get the actual seeding done. So I'm not going to do too much, probably just maybe 3 or 4 acres total, I would guess, but just kind of hit the spots that were disturbed so that we can get that soil locked together and have some residue there next spring or next summer as the soybeans get started on. Alright, we're over here at the farm where we're doing some cover crop on the new terraces here, and I just did the first little bit and was going to get out and check and see how things seem to be working. So we can adjust how deep the coulters on the front run based on that cylinder in the tongue, so it basically will pick up or lower the front end of the toolbar, and then the drill kind of sits independently. It has a pivot in the middle here, so if you're going around a curve, the drill hopefully follows the coulters, or the drill row units follow the coulters, and then also has a slot in this top link where the drill can sort of pivot up back and forth to follow the contours of the ground and, in theory, maintain consistent seeding depth. Probably the stuff where we're at here is packed pretty good underneath since it was just worked on with a dozer. We were basically just kind of checking to see if we're getting a slot and getting some rye like into the dirt. So you can see the rye seeds there, which is about what we want to see. Looks like we're fairly consistent. I'm just looking at these rods sticking up across the back here. Those are basically what does the down pressure on the row unit. So just kind of seeing if we have halfway even down pressure across the drill. And we'll kind of double check just to make sure that all the rows are dropping seed since we just started here, but hopefully that shouldn't be an issue, and we'll be able to get this done before it gets too dark. All right, the sun is setting and got done what I wanted to drill here. Ended up doing about 3.5 acres, it looks like, based on the acre counter, which I'm sure isn't going to show up in the video. But since we're going down the highway, we're going to put the stop in the hydraulic cylinder here, and then there's a couple other things that we have to do to keep this thing from swaying wildly as we go down the road. So we'll get that put in and the pin in it. And then back on the hitch, got stops that keep the drill from pivoting in relation to the hitch. And also the center link stop. And finally we've got a pin up here that we'll stick through that'll make sure that our main lift can't drop down as we're going down the road. And get this thing put in the shed and see what happens weather-wise, because it sounds like it's gonna snow, rain, be miserable by afternoon tomorrow. Morning. These ruts that we're looking at are where I was just trying to seed in some waterways. The dozer guy warned me that it was kind of wet. Didn't really say where, but I'm guessing that was the one he was talking about. So I didn't get stuck. That's the main takeaway so far, I guess. We're gonna hit this spot right here. So basically just kind of went through, and the spots that were low, it might be a little wet right there also. Come on, baby. So it looks like we have a few spots where we're going to try to go across, which is going to be fun because we've got a tile ditch over there on the other side that is not going to be very fun to cross, but I don't think there's any way around that. We'll just try to cross it at 90 degrees and hope that we don't break anything and don't get the tractor stuck. Right now we're just drilling straight rye. since these spots have kind of been a problem to get seeded in the past, and I can get to them easily once the crop is in the ground, my plan was to just get some rye in to try to get things held for the time being, and then come back like after the rye is matured, either like in July or so, or maybe even early spring, and spot in some perennial grasses at that time, once we kind of know that the dirt is staying where it needs to and we don't have another low spot again. Unfortunately, probably since I've made some nice ruts at this point, that's not going to help the situation as far as holding those spots, but hopefully if I can get across without tearing things up worse, the drill will be able to kind of level that out some, and with the freeze-thaw cycles, and hopefully we're going to get a little bit more warm weather so this stuff can get sprouted. I'm drilling at a reasonably high rate at the moment and kind of trying to overlap those center areas as well, so if they get seeded twice, and kind of trying to do either figure 8 pattern or like plant down the waterway and then also do crossing passes to kind of try to get rows going multiple directions. For this drill, I think we're 10-inch spacing, 8 or 10-inch spacing on this drill. So they're fairly close together, but if you just go straight down the waterway, you can still get washing in between the rows, especially when the seedlings are small. So by kind of varying the direction, that helps to hold things a little bit, to slow the water down, even at a small scale. Helps, you know, make sure that the grass grows where you want it to long term. So that's basically where we're at. It's about 9 o'clock right now. I've got a little bit done already this morning. The rain, I think, and rain, snow, whatever it ends up being, is supposed to start around 10, so we don't have too much time. I wanted to try to get the seed in the ground at least, and it's pretty wet, so I'm thinking I probably am not going to try to run the cultipacker over this right now, but if it does get warm and dry next week on top, I may come back and try to crumble some dirt in on top of the seeds a little bit. Well, about 45 seconds after I turned the camera off, we had some excitement. Managed to catch this hose on the quick hitch and break a fitting. The hose itself, I think, is okay. Maybe not OSHA approved, but the metal braid seems intact, so probably I'm not going to replace it right now. But it looks like I'm going to go to town and see if I can find a 90-degree fitting to put on the end of that cylinder. Fun times! Well, I wouldn't call that a thing of beauty, but we did at least get the ruts knocked down a little bit and some seed there. This time I'm going to pop open a lid and we're just going to broadcast some also. So since that hydraulic hose, or the fitting on the hydraulic hose that I broke, is just for the depth control on the coulters, I decided to just keep running since I don't have very much time before conditions get worse here. I was able to kind of knock it back together, so that it won't get dirt in there, and I'll just have to leave it where it's at, which is kind of full depth, which is maybe not completely ideal in some spots, because we run the risk of stirring things up a little bit more than maybe we would ideally want to. It's perfectly fine for this area, because it's all mud and was torn up where I found the wet spots earlier. But my hope is that if we can kind of get through the weather here this week and get some sunshine and warmer stuff next week, that maybe it'll dry off enough, and having things stirred up like this, we can get some of that stuff on the top kind of a little crispy, and then run across this with a cultipacker and break that up, and get some dirt kind of spilled into those low spots, and also get it leveled out a little bit more. If not, since I mostly went across here, it'll sort of act as little mini dams of the water coming down, so that is not the end of the world also, I guess. Not super confident that this is going to actually really hold here, just because it was as wet as it is, but we'll give it a shot and see what happens. Well, got finished with what I wanted to seed down today. Since we got weather coming, I'm going to try to do a little bit of mowing, so we're going to put the mower back on the 230 over here and go mow some fence lines or waterways. Probably might try to do some waterways if it's not too wet, and kind of see how that goes. I haven't actually used the mower since we put it back together with the new bearings and the gearbox, so I kind of want to see if that's going to actually solve the problem, or if it's going to keep doing what it was doing before with popping the snap ring out of the groove and popping the seal out on the where the shaft goes into the front of the gearbox. So I'm going to try that out and see how things go. Then this afternoon I'll fix that fitting that broke on that hitch cylinder on the drill, and do a couple other little things, and then probably call it quits. Since Thanksgiving's in a couple days here, kind of want to get back to where I actually live, away from the farm, and kind of be there so that I don't get stuck here during the crappy weather, because I need to go to some other family stuff tomorrow, or not tomorrow, Thursday. So that's pretty much where we're at. Looks like the rest of this week is going to be kind of crappy weather-wise, so I don't think I'm going to miss too much around here. All right, we got hooked up to the tractor, and when we had things actually torn apart, my camera was MIA, so I didn't really get any footage of the inside. But basically there's a tapered bearing in the front here and a straight bearing in the back, which to me seems like maybe not the best design. Everything's held in with snap rings, so like this cap comes out and there's a snap ring and some shims, and then the bearing, and kind of similar deal on this side, there's a seal here, and then snap ring that pops into a groove, and then some shims, and those shims are kind of what were causing the problems, we think. Maybe some wear in the bearings. When we were running it last week, it had sort of like pushed the side of the seal out but hadn't popped out completely. And I think it had done the same thing as it was doing this summer, where it popped that snap ring out of the groove but had wedged the bearing race sideways so it didn't continue to push out. So we kind of ran it crooked and figured that was probably not good on things. So we replaced the bearings and were able to get a shim that was close enough to the right size that we think it might have worked to get things tightened back up with the new bearings and everything. It's kind of hard to get things actually squeezed together since it's snap rings on both ends. There's not really any way to push, like if you were doing an axle or a hub bearing or something like that. You normally have like a castle nut where you can sort of adjust the tension on a pair of tapered bearings, but with the one straight bearing, that's kind of doesn't really work. I kind of wonder if you could actually put a tapered bearing in the back, but we just put it back the way it was for the time being. At least we'll see how this works and kind of go from there. It made it several years before it started causing problems, so if $60 worth of bearings get us back in business for the time being and get another 10 years out of it, that would be fantastic. And if not, then we'll be back into it again. But we did cheat a little bit for the time being and just we put a screw in there to pop that cap out. I've never actually seen a deal like this, but it's essentially like a seal without a hole in the middle. So it has like rubber stuff around the outside. It's just a metal cap. So basically put a screw in there, was able to pry to pop that cap out, and then just sealed up the hole and reused both the seal on the front and the cap on the back. And then there were some chunks of metal in the gear oil. I'm not 100% sure where they came from. I think they might have been like wear off of the teeth. There's a set of bevel gears in here, so obviously there's a shaft that goes down that the blades spin on, and then the shaft going through has a gear inside. They didn't look too bad, so we're hoping that they'll be okay, but wanted to try to get as much of that metal out of there as possible. And then obviously with the top off the gearbox, it was pretty easy to just pour it back in to get the level set and stuff. All right, this is going to be the inaugural spin on the new bearings, so watch for oil flinging out of the front of the gearbox. I'm going to kind of feather it into engaged here. Noisier than I would like, but sometimes that comes and goes a little bit with speed. I don't see any oil on the top of the deck. Lizzie's inspecting. As long as she doesn't get too close. Get the Hornet sticker away. so that's good. It seems a little noisier than I wanted it to be, but I also don't normally run it with the glass open on the back of the cab, so that may or may not actually be anything. I'm gonna jump out and check things over and see how they look and make sure that everything's still tight after spinning a little bit. Looks like our seal is still in place. Yanking on that slip clutch and the shaft seems tight, so that's good. I guess we'll go run it for a while and then check it after a while and see how things look. Well, so far so good. The oil seems to be staying in the gearbox and everything seems to be working. We're just mowing a road ditch right now that never got hit this summer. Doesn't seem as wet as I thought it might be, which is good. Probably famous last words, I'll get stuck in 5 minutes. But seems to be doing okay. One thing that I don't think I mentioned when I was kind of explaining the gearbox repairs, those snap rings seemed like they were kind of rounded on the edges, so I ground those down to make sure, or try to get as good a grip on that machine slot as possible. So that may be part of the reason that it's working better this time also. I'm not sure. It is staying kind of noisy, or noisier than I think it should be, but maybe that's just a figment of my imagination, I'm not sure. So it's about 12:30 and so far so good, I think. I'm a little bit creeped out that there's about 1/8 of an inch there that's clean. But I don't think it's moving, or I can't see it move at least. So I'm pleasantly surprised that that's holding. The rain is also pretty much held off, although right when I got out of the tractor it seems like it started sprinkling here. So I don't know if I'll be able to do much later this afternoon or not. I've got a little bit more to do around an old building site up by the road here, and then we'll be done with this area, and we'll probably go grab some food and then see what the situation looks like. But the gearbox seems to be holding. We do have some stuff stuck to the deck here, but I think that's just from gear oil that dripped out before, or that was left there for when it was leaking last week. Well, it's about 3:20 and I've actually been quite a bit more productive today than I really thought I was going to be. It has sprinkled on and off a little bit, but not enough to really matter too much. We had some maybe an hour ago that got things wet enough that there's crap stuck to the mower now. But not too bad, although it is really gray and getting colder out. So I think I'm probably going to finish up mowing the fence lines on this field and then head home. But was able to make some progress anyway. I have kind of one more farm that I need to do a bunch of mowing on. It has about 1 million waterways, so that's going to be fun. But hopefully we'll get a break in the weather sometime in the next couple weeks to be able to do that. I'm going to be back down at the farm probably most of next week, maybe even this weekend, depending on what the forecast looks like, and kind of how things are going on the terraces and stuff. Because when they get that waterway over there done, I want to be able to see that ASAP, basically. So we'll see how things go. The weather looks pretty mediocre to terrible for a Friday-Saturday range, so, or more Friday, I think, and Saturday maybe it wasn't going to be too bad. But that could change, or maybe it has changed, I don't know. So we'll do a little bit more mowing, get that fitting fixed on the no-till drill, and probably call it for the time being at least.